What's up, guys? It's your girl Hassana back with another episode of The Elephant in a Pink Room. I pray that this episode finds you guys in good spirit and in good health, and that you are really taking the opportunity to embrace what this season has to offer you. So, welcome back, everyone, and welcome to those of you who are new. For those of you who are listening to this audibly, I actually have a YouTube video for it, so you could go to my YouTube channel and watch this. Not live, but visually, if you would like to. So I am back with another episode, and this week I kind of wanted to talk about something that I feel a lot of people struggle with, especially when you're trying to navigate between different spaces, right? When you're growing, where your old space no longer suits you, but you're entering into a new environment that you've never been in. And a lot of times in these circumstances, we find it hard to really show up as ourselves because we struggle with whether or not we need to change to fit into the environment, or if we could really be who we are, and just being kind of like working and in my career for a while. Like, I know how that is, especially because in certain environments we automatically think that who we are won't be accepted. So there becomes this kind of like dilemma. Do we change our personality in order to fit in, or do we just show up? This is who I am, you're going to accept it. And what I've learned is that, number one, when the environment is for you, you will be accepted. That's number one. So that's one thing that we have to understand. When we are called somewhere, it's because we fit there, right? Even if we don't look or act or respond like other people that's in that environment, but we're not supposed to be the same. And I oftentimes see how it's so easy for other races and cultures to show up as themselves, but a lot of times, like, other people struggle with that. And I was just in a place where I just felt like it wasn't fair to myself, because trying to be someone else is very uncomfortable and it never works, right? It never works. But what I've started to realize is that once I started showing up as my authentic self, not only was I more confident, because this is who I am, so I don't have to worry about switching on and switching off and things like that, but also it gave me a confidence because I'm confident in who I am. So now my personality just is my personality. So I'm just being who I am. I'm not changing how I talk. I'm not changing all of these other things. But I also think that there's a kind of like, not a balance, but there's kind of like molding that needs to happen. Because yeah, there are a lot of things that have changed about myself, that I have changed because I wanted to and I felt the need to, but I still try to be myself authentically. So today I wanted to chat it up about showing up as your authentic self. Trying to fit in with other people doesn't work, because we don't need carbon copies, right? There are people who will draw to you because of who you are, and you will draw to other people because of who they are. But if everyone is trying to be the same, or if you're not being who you're supposed to be, a lot of times people can actually see it. Like, regardless of how much you think like, oh, I'm being real, or this is what people want to see, people can tell when it's not comfortable for you, when you're not comfortable in your skin, and oftentimes too, we try to adapt to an environment, not only for ourselves but also for the other people, because we feel like this is what they want. But that's not necessarily true. They want who you are. And even if they're used to something else, they'll appreciate you for who you are, So that's another thing that I started to learn, like just showing up as myself. It makes me confident, and it ultimately makes me happy, right? So when we think about being authentic, right? And I'm gonna kind of like give you guys some definitions and things like that as I kind of dig into this, because this is how I had to learn this. So, being authentic. So, authentic is of undisputed origin. It's genuine. So, not only is it the fact of, oh, authentic being this is who I am, but it's genuine. Like, this is genuinely who I am, and I'm going to show you who I am. And when you are genuine in all things, it's reciprocated. It is reciprocated because people respect that. People really respect genuine things. And genuine is truly what something is said to be. It's authentic. So when I'm truly who I say that I am, because that's another thing too. When you're trying to be something that you're not, what usually happens, right, is that you have to always be on. You have to always be kind of like making sure that you're fit in that mold that you put out there for people. And sometimes it may slip. Sometimes it may slip because it's not genuine. So whatever you say that you are, you need to show that. Like, that is what people is going to be looking for. Like, it's being truthful. It's being true to who you are. So if I tell someone that I'm a doctor, and I'm just using this as an example, if I tell somebody that I'm a doctor and they, they get sick, they're going to call me, they're going to expect for me to be a doctor and not, act like I don't know what's going on. But it's all about being genuine. If you tell me, okay, I'm the type of person, like, I keep it real, I'm truthful. When circumstances happen, I'm going to expect for you to be truthful. And I might go to you for the truth because that's who you portrayed yourself to be, as opposed to someone else who I kind of don't know whether or not they can be truthful. So it's just showing up as who you say that you are. Right. And a lot of times I think we struggle with this because a lot of us really don't know who we are. Right. There's phases that we go through. It was a phase that I had to go through. I feel so stuffed and like, ooh, tired. I mean, it's just like hot or something. But there's phases that we have to go through where we have to kind of like dig into who God called us to be. Right. Because what I've done, and I'm just going to be honest, what I've done is that, I didn't really like who I was for reasons, I mean, I don't know. It was just like I didn't really like who I was because I felt like I was weak. I felt like people would run all over me and all these other type of things. And what I started to do was I started to adapt other personalities and attributes to kind of like show, and the truth of the matter is, like, I'm not weak, I am strong, but I didn't know how to reciprocate that. And this is where the authenticity comes in at, right? Because how something looks on someone else, it may not look the same for you. So me thinking that because people were aggressive and argumentative and like brass and cruel, like, I thought that that was being strong, but it really wasn't. Because what I've learned is that it shows a sign of weakness because you have no control, right? And I didn't understand that my strength was the fact that I was able to be tempered, at a certain way. And I had a little bit of patience with people, and I had grace and mercy for people. But I looked at it as being weak when it really was a strength. So what I started to do was I started to emulate what I thought being strong was, right? So now I'm completely out of my character. I'm completely crazy. And now I'm completely like crazy because now I'm in this position that I have to navigate in, but it's not really who I am. So it's still uncomfortable too. So then what comes with me being uncomfortable, so now I become defensive, I become cruel, very kind of like cut short. rude in some instances mean. And like a lot of people might not think that I was mean, but I felt like I was being mean because I was so frustrated. Like it brought upon a frustration on me because I wasn't really being who I was supposed to be. So we need to understand, number one, who are you? Who are you supposed to be? Now, let's say, for instance, it's like, okay, I don't like who I am, right? But I want to change some things. Like that's always necessary. And that's what I had to do. There was things that I had to change in order to walk in, who I am, right? So I changed them the same way how I changed them to be the person who I thought I wanted to be. I had to change them to be my authentic self. And what it took was a relationship with God. It took me having this relationship with God where I was able to go to Him and really, really hear His voice as it pertains to myself, because a lot of times we could trick ourselves to believe certain things, and it's in those quiet times that it is where God can really, really pour into you. And you have to also be a willing vessel to be able to embrace what He's telling you, and listen to the instructions and all of these things that He tells you. And it wasn't until then that a lot of things started to make sense. So I started to embrace who I am, who I truly am. And once I started to do that, it brought about this confidence, right? Because it also gave me value. It gave me value because now I know I don't have to be like other people. Like, I'm valuable the way that I am. And once I realized that, it made me confident because now I don't have to kind of like, switch things up and try to act like I'm somebody that I'm not. I could just really be who I am. Like, even with the way that I talk and, a lot of those other things, there were times where, now to be honest with you, there were times, because I did used to curse a lot. Well, not a lot. Like, I never was like a seller, but I used to curse, and, I do talk like slang and things like that, but before it was worse. Like, before, my dialogue was a little ghetto, I would say. Some people would say whatever. But so I did start to work on my vocabulary. I started to work on my confidence speaking, because a lot of times, like even on interviews, this is what made me really start to work on my vocabulary and things like that, is that back in the day, back in the 2000s, I used to be so petrified of going on interviews because I didn't really know how to conduct myself professionally, right? And I'm like, I don't want to get in these interviews. And they tell you things like, don't say like too much. Make sure you have clear sentences, complete sentences. Don't use slang, and obviously you're not supposed to curse. But it was so terrifying for me because when I went into these interviews, I had to focus so hard to make sure that I was dotting my I's and crossing my T's from what I was told was the proper etiquette in interviews. And because that wasn't who I was, it was hard for me to do that, because now I'm in interviews. I have to concentrate on my verbiage so much, making sure that I'm not slipping on slang, making sure that I'm not slipping with cuss words, and it was just like, Hasana, that needs to change. So there are things that need to change that we know need to change. You know what I'm saying? Like, we know that these things need to change, but it's for the good. It's for bettering ourselves. So that's something different. But in order to be authentic, like, you have to understand and you have to know for sure, like, me showing, what does that mean? What does me entering in spaces authentically mean? And it means just being yourself, just being who you say that you are. That's just like, people do interviews at jobs, and they have all of this stuff. Oh, I do this, I do that, and it's a bunch of fluff. And then when they get the job, the manager's looking like, well, I thought that you knew how to And that's one of my, like, I don't want to be that person. Like, I would rather learn the skill set and then be able to do the job than to do the fluff, because it goes back to not being authentic, right? So today I just wanted to share with you guys a couple of kind of like tips, that I just have about how to show up as your authentic self. So number one, start by just being yourself. Start by just being yourself, and people will adapt. I think a lot of times, when we enter into spaces, we already want to be accepted, but not knowing that people will accept you if they know who you are. And a lot of people love people that they could trust. And how can I trust you is that I have to believe that you are who you say that you are. And how can I believe that you are who you say that you are is through your actions. It's through how you show up. It's through how you respond. And I learn who you are and I start to trust you. And that's how you start to fit into these spaces. And again, like I said, God's not going to send you anywhere that you're not supposed to be. Number two, don't compromise. Let's stop compromising. I've done it. I know people who do it. And when you compromise, it just means that you accept standards that are lower than what's desirable, right? So if you say, I want to work for a company where I can show my skill set and I could be I could be who I am and not have to deviate from who I am, my morals and my personality and things like that. Don't settle. Keep going until you find the spaces that you fit in. Sometimes we want to fit into places that we're not supposed to fit in. So you're never going to fit in. So don't compromise though your personality. Don't compromise your morals, your beliefs, your truths. Don't compromise none of this stuff to fit in with other people, because it's going to be detrimental to your growth, because you're not going to be able to grow and prosper as the person that you are when you're in an environment that doesn't serve that. When you're compromising who you are to fit in with other people. And when you compromise who you are to fit in with other people, you're not being true to yourself. Because that's really what being authentic is, like, to be true to yourself and also to other people, the people around you. So don't compromise those things. Don't compromise the things that you love. Don't compromise the things that you want just to be a part of something that you probably not supposed to be a part of anyway. And number three, walk in your truth. We have to walk in our truth. Like, society tells us that in order to fit in, we have to be like everyone else. Like, we have to have all these commonalities, and we have to look a certain way. We have to talk a certain way, dress a certain way, act a certain way. But the kingdom says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. That's what Psalms 139, 3-14 says. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. So that means however you were made, God made you to be who you are. And First Peter 2:9 says, but you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, or a peculiar people, right? And peculiar means strange or odd, special. This is what that means. So God created us to be unique. He created us to be strange and odd and particular. That's why we all look the same. No one really truly has any attributes that are exactly the same. Like, you could have twins that may look the same, but there's still things about them that's different, and that's how people are that's close to them are able to tell them apart. You may look like your mother, but there are certain things. You may have a different skin complexion. Your eyes may be more sharp. Like, it's certain things. Like, he made us unique. He made us to be different from each other, and we got to know that, and we got to stand in that truth and not allow people to make us feel like we don't have any value because we don't fit a social norm. or making us feel like we don't have a value because we don't possess certain material things, or we don't have certain education or intellect. Like, that's untrue. Everyone don't need that. Like, I probably needs a certain intellect to talk to somebody that's reading out the dictionary, but it's just that that's not what God intended for us. He never intended for us to all be alike. We are to worship together. We are to commune together. We are to have community and things like that, but we're not supposed to be exactly like someone else. And what happens oftentimes that I think also is that, people see things that they like, right? And they want to emulate it. So now you start to change your life and your lifestyle to be more like these people. But it's just like, are you really truly being yourself? Is that really who you want to be? Do you feel comfortable as this person? Do you really feel comfortable? I know that there's been times that I've been around people and I felt uncomfortable. And at first, you know what? It's funny because now that I think about it, at first I focused more on the fact that I didn't fit in, as opposed to the fact that I wasn't meant to fit in. And when you look at, and it may sound like an oxymoron or whatever, but when you kind of think about it, it's like when you focus more on the fact that I don't fit in, that victimizes you, right? So it's just more like now you're thinking about yourself. What's wrong with me? Why I can't be around these people? But when you realize that you wasn't meant to fit in, then you're more comfortable, because it's like, okay, I wasn't meant to fit in here, but I could still be myself because this is who I am. And I know that I'm not supposed to be in this space, and I think that also, that has helped me along the way and along my journey, because I have had issues with like rejection and acceptance and things like that, and now that I look back in hindsight, it's kind of like, but Hassana, you never was supposed to be in those spaces. Like, that's not your tribe. That's not the environment that God called you to. That's why you couldn't fit in there, because you wasn't meant to fit in there. But back then, it made me feel like I was an alien. It made me feel like, oh, you know, and what it I ain't gonna say it tortured me, but the trauma from it made me really believe that I didn't fit in anywhere, you know. So even when it came time for me to do new things with new people or go to events and stuff like that, like, I always entered into those spaces defeated, because I just naturally believed that I didn't belong anywhere, which was a lie. But now that I'm starting to see things differently, when I'm not afraid, I could be around people that isn't like me or that I'm different from, and I'll be okay, because it's like, okay, I don't have to be in this space forever, so why compromise who I am and make myself uncomfortable for a short period of time to satisfy this short window of time that I'm around these people, as opposed to just using that thing in a different light and just going in as myself. And people either gonna like it or they're gonna hate it. And most of the times, what I realize is that people don't hate it. People like authentic people. People like people that's different from them. The same way I like being around people that's different from me, because I learn a lot. I learn a lot about people and how they live. How different people live, different people's mindsets. Things that people like that's different. You get insight on things that you've never been exposed to when you're around people that's not like you. But I guess when I was younger, from being around kind of like the same people all the time, my mindset was different. But now is even more different, and I know that I don't have to be like anybody. Like, I could just be who I am and keep it moving. You either like it or you don't. And most of the times, like, I don't think that people really necessarily cast me out as much as I believed, as much as I believed that I was being cast out. Oh, people don't like me. I don't fit in anywhere, and I think that that was just all the trick of the enemy. How he do. He wants to kind of like tap at our insecurities and tap at those things, and that's what I was saying the other week about having these open doors, because when you have these open doors, rejection, disappointment, um betrayal, all of those are open doors that the enemy uses to get to tug on you, to tug on your heart, and to kind of like get you to not like yourself, and to get you to change, and to be bitter, and to be angry, and it's not even worth it. So that is all for this week. Just remember, listen, we all are different for a reason. We're all different for a reason. And don't ever put yourself in a place where you feel so uncomfortable in your skin because you feel like you can't really be who you are to satisfy other people. Just be authentic, be true to yourself. Like, God wants us to worship him in spirit and in truth, right? But how could we worship him in spirit and in truth when we can't be truthful to ourselves, when we can't be truthful to who we are? Because when you try to go to God as somebody else and try to trick him, and not being genuine, he already knows. And truth be told, most people know, regardless of how much you try to tell people that you are something, most people know who you really are. So just remember that. Remember that. You're wasting your time for the most part. So I'm gonna let you guys go. Thank you for watching this episode. Please share, like, follow me on my social media platforms. I am going to put the link to all of my social media down in the show notes, as well as some of the scriptures that I mentioned in this episode. So until next time, keep it stylish.